Well, I want to welcome you to this next podcast. I'm Dr. Randy Dirks, and you are at the Funding the Future podcast. It's designed for executives that work in the fundraising world. This may be presidents of organizations, chief fundraising officers, and we really just want to delve into what is this world like? How do we navigate it well in ways that will be meaningful to our supporters, and then also great blessing to the kinds of causes we're involved in. Today, I have as my guest Ian Vickers, and Ian and I go back into the academic world when we worked at a university together, really about 25 years ago. That's hard to imagine, Ian. It's been that long. And then after that season for Ian being there and his wife Joanna, and then I moved on to another organization. Ian then had been involved in Africa, working there in a variety of ways, and now is the founder and the president of Global Partners in Hope. So I'm going to invite Ian just to share a little bit about what Global Partners in Hope is all about, how it started, what does it do, and then we're going to launch into the podcast and enter in some questions that I think will be very meaningful because of Ian's role as a founder and as a president of this organization. So Ian, good to see you again, my friend. And why don't you give us a brief intro to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Randy, it is good to connect with you. A lot of great memories of our time at the university together, and it's good to connect. I know both of us have been involved internationally, and so it's obviously great to talk about these things. Global Partners in Hope started as a result of a trip to West Africa in 2004. I went with a couple doctors just to explore into West Africa, country of Mali. And as a part of that trip, we ended up in this rural area where there were about 200 people just laying around under this tree without any medical care. The doctors immediately kind of went into their doctor mode, started treating patients. I was translating for them, and we spent about 2 hours, and we had to leave. And as we were driving away, one of the African nurses, the only one that was there, followed us, and she had a goat in her hand, and she said, "Thank you for coming, thank you for teaching me and for training me, and treating these patients. Here's a goat." And I remember thinking, okay, we do not need a goat, but she insisted. And so we ended up with this goat as we're driving away. And that was a defining moment for me, for sure, where I realized there is nothing for these folks out here at all. And so that was 2004. 2006, we started with a project to help build a hospital. And then we went in 2008, became an independent organization that was formed where we really focus on maternal and pediatric care in West Africa. And there are three things that we do. We put in water wells, and then we put in medical centers, and then we have them sustainable through renewable energies, solar energy. So those are, electricity and water is the first thing that you have to have for a health center to work. And so since that time, 2006, today we were doing our annual report, treat over 600,000 patients. I know since 2010 alone, we've had 50,000 uh, babies being born at these various clinics throughout West Africa, Mali, Togo, and now we're starting to work in Benin and Ivory Coast.
Wow, that's quite a story. And you play obviously a major role. I know you worked in West Africa, so you have the French language, and
Yeah.
you've been on the ground. You understand the realities that are there. Obviously, a lot of poverty, minimal medical care, and sometimes not very effective at all. So when you talk about meeting a need, this is a pretty profound, tangible, practical, physical need that you're meeting. So I'm sure that brings a lot of joy to you to see those
Yeah,
kind of
definitely,
things
definitely.
happen.
That's how it's gone and how it's developed. Yeah.
For sure. So when you think about, I'll just pick up on the word developed. You're a nonprofit. You're raising funds that enable you and people on the ground to do the work that they're doing. And so I'd like you to maybe even have the picture in your mind. You don't need to give details of a donor that's been involved in your organization for some time, and sort of go back in your mind to when you first connected with that person, and then they started to become a donor. So it's very early. And I want you to compare that with the relationship now over time. So you've got to know that person better. over time. In what way does that relationship change as you get to know the person? In other words, the kinds of conversations you have, the things that you talk about, how does that go deeper in levels of connecting with a person over that period of time?
Well, I will say for sure, everything happens built on trust. It starts. We always say you go the speed of trust. So, and I mean like genuine trust, and that happens over time. It's not something you can, you know, add water to and instantly happen. You have to build that relationship, and so it might those conversations initially might take 6 months to even a year of just, you know, letting them know that one, you're very passionate about this, you're very credible, that you're gonna get done what needs to get done, and you're gonna be a safe person for them to invest in terms of giving. And so, we try to realize that it's gonna take time and be patient with the building of those relationships. And then as that relationship's built, as trust is built over time, then, the conversations become more what I call, just transparent, more honest. I met with a donor, in fact, this morning, who's been supporting the organization for the last 18 years. And, that donor has contributed, several $100,000 to the work. But our conversation this morning was a lot about personal issues, family, life, those kind of things. And then at the end of the conversation, it's more about the work. But because the relationship's so strong and the credibility is there and the trust is there, it's a very open conversation. It's a very what I call a relational kind of a relationship. Yeah.
For sure.
So our conversations have a long history, conversations about his wife, his kids, his life, in general. And sometimes I think for donors, once you have that relationship, they want to talk about those things. And then at the end, they're like, okay, what do you need from me to help make this thing happen?
That's uh, that's very insightful. It reminds me of two words: transaction and transformational. And it's very easy in the donor world to simply see a donor and connecting with him or her or the couple as a transaction. Well, I've got X number of, I've got the budget, I've got the goals, I've got the plans, I've got the vision, and and I've got a board that is holding me accountable. So let's delve into take this maybe a little deeper. I love what you talked about. You'll only move at the speed of trust. So how do you know what a donor's real interest is that sort of goes just beyond, okay, I'm going to give you X number of dollars, which is wonderful to see, but also really capturing what's at the heart of that donor, what motivates them, what moves them. How do you gain that awareness, that understanding, just in your world and the kinds of things you do?
Well, I would say for sure it starts by listening to their areas of interest, asking a lot of questions on the front end to figure out what's that point of connection that they would have with the organization based on who they are as a person, what resonates with them. For us, there are four areas. One is it's going to be water wells, clean water, medical, renewable energy, and then a spiritual growth. And so what we try to do is find out what area of interest specifically ignites them or draws them into what we're doing. And then once I understand that, then I help them understand how this connection with our organization will help them make a difference. So rather than them saying, well, they're giving money to us to do the work, we're really saying, how can we help facilitate what resonates with you, what's on your heart, what you really want to do to make a difference in the world. And so I look at it like an investment, like if you're talking to your investment person, and so I say, how would you like to invest this? And then here are some ways that we can facilitate that opportunity for a great return on that investment.
Yeah, I love that. I heard it say one time when you can talk with somebody, and maybe it's earlier on in the conversation. I'd love to hear your comments on this, but it's sort of like it comes down to this particular phrase that you could use, and it's what gives you joy in giving.
Yeah.
And you're not you're really looking at the values a person has at their heart. And so I appreciate what you said there about, what motivates them, what has been important to them, where do they want to see a long-term investment, a long-term legacy left. So, and that comes sometimes takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I know that one of the things that amazed me or kind of shocks me sometimes, we've been around for 18 years, is to look back at our database and think, hey, this person's been giving to us every year faithfully for 18 years. And so part of the thing that baffles me is why have they stayed with us this long? They just keep trusting us to do this. And so then I start to dig into that mentally, and I think it's because we really, help people understand that they're part of that. They're not just giving to an organization, we're helping facilitate that dream and that impact that they wanna have. And I mean that in a genuine way. Like, we really see ourselves as a conduit for people to say, "Hey, you want to invest, you want to leave a legacy, you want to have an impact. We have ways in which you can do that through this organization, and we're going to give you the updates. We're going to make you understand the people that you are impacting, And so some people, for us, it's Africa. Some people it's not even Africa. They're not really It's not an Africa thing for them. It's a human thing for them. So it's more like sharing about those stories of that mom that would have died had she not had that facility to give birth to, and or a sickle cell patient that received treatment and will live now because they've gotten a treatment, and it's because of the investment you've made, where you know that that investment is literally saving lives every day.
Yeah. That's powerful when you can talk about the impact, saving a life. I mean, you can't get much greater than that in the sense of physical, obviously
Yeah.
the spiritual impact too. I want to pick up on that donor that's given faithfully to you and your organization really for 18 years. Is there, when you think of, let's say, let's just use the example of somebody's been giving $1,000 a year, maybe a one-time gift, maybe they give 75, $100 every month, and they're faithful in that and they keep giving. Is there a point, I know your initiatives, your programs, your ventures are probably increasing in cost and scope. So what started out as a budget 18 years ago has maybe been increasing, obviously with more impact. How do you go to a donor that has been giving faithfully for 18 years and maybe share the bigger impact of what the organization is now doing as opposed to where it was 18 years ago? What does that look like for you?
So that would be exactly that conversation I had this morning over a breakfast with the one donor who's I've known for 18 years. I looked back at the database just before we had breakfast because I was just curious, and I calculated what that person had given over the lifetime of the organization. And I sat down and I said to that person, I said, do you realize that you've given this much? And he said, yeah, I do know that. So he was keenly aware of it. And
Yes.
I said, well, because of that now, and I gave our stats, look at, like, 600,000 patients now have access to medical care, and it was like, because they're connected with us pretty regularly through our newsletter, through text, through all that, he was like, "Yeah, that's right." And it was, so he knew it wasn't like a shock for him. And I think in my mind, as I was sitting there listening to him, I'm like, "Well, he's not surprised by this because he's following all these communication things that we're giving to him along the way, where I will, like, we put a new well in and I'll send him a picture of that well on a text. So it's more personal. And so we try to make sure, even as we grow, that our communication still has a personal touch to it. And that becomes an ongoing challenge. But I think it's not just the idea that you've got a new donor, but, like I always say, you're trying to retain those donors over
Mhm.
a period of time. And that's always just a challenge, because I always look at it, I'm not asking them to just give to global partners. I'm asking them to not give to something else.
That's true. Yeah.
And then for them to stay. But I think also, as a donor makes maybe that initial investment, like I've had it where a donor's made an initial investment of a certain amount, kind of to test the waters to see, hey,
Yeah.
are they going to be faithful? Are they going to communicate to me? Are they going to make me feel like I'm a part of this, or am I just writing a check to them? So once they understand that there's a sense of impact that they're having, then they up that investment. Then I had recently a donor who's been over 3 years given gradually a little bit more at a time, who sold his business and said, "Hey, I'm going to earmark X amount of thousands of dollars every year to you for X, the next 10 years for sure."
Right.
And that's always like a great conversation because then you can budget.
So true. I want to pick up on something you said. I really liked it. Where this particular donor, you took a photo, you sent it to him in a text, and sort of like that immediate. It's moving beyond the annual report and maybe some larger kinds of publications that we tend to put out, which are important. So now you're drilling down and you're really treating that individual donor very uniquely. So talk a little bit about how you do that. Obviously, you've shared one way, which I think is tremendous. Just catching that, we use our phones so much, and text is it's almost like you hear your phone click and oh, I got a text. I'm going to look at it. So it's like that
Mhm.
immediate response. What are the other ways throughout the course of a year that you connect with your donors?
It's interesting because our culture shifts so much. Like we find that email, people are just inundated with email, so they're reading less. But on the other end, everybody's kind of gone digital where we've also gone to hard print. And we did a little research on that, and we will send out a hard print. And the idea behind that is that they get it, comes, and it's not like their junk mail. It's like, oh, I know this organization, I'm vested. So
Yeah.
I'm put all my junk mail to one side, but I'm keeping this. And I might not read it now, but I'm gonna read it. I'm not gonna throw this away. It's too valuable. So they put it on their counter or they put it someplace, and then they open it up, then they read it, but then they don't throw it away because it's a valuable thing, and
Sure.
so it's always there on their counter reminding them of the organization, or they put it, or it's visual in the house, and they might read it and go back to reading it. But we noticed an increase in donors and donor retention when they get a hard copy, which
Okay.
is countercultural to the digital world, where we get, tend to, but I feel like the digital stuff or we find is just gets lost in the work emails and the other emails. So any way we can get in front of someone and make it personal. Obviously we do calls. We try not to do like generic random calls like a telemarketing calls,
Sure.
because people are just turned off to that. We also try to do events where we become kind of exclusive invite events where people can come and learn about that. We've done certain Zoom meetings. Right now, we're looking at doing an app. And some people have said, well, why would we do an app? You don't need an app. And I'm like, well, the app is kind of a way for people to feel, like they've got a direct connection into the organization rather than having to get on the website and search. You can just click on that app button and you're going to get latest updates. You're going to get personal information
Yeah.
from us. It's going to come exclusively to you on your phone, and then you feel like, "Okay, I'm making a huge difference."
That's quite innovative, the idea of an app. I've never heard that before for a nonprofit utilizing that, but we're becoming more savvy in using technology as organizations. Maybe nonprofits are a little slower than for profit, but I think we have an amazing platform with what you just described because you could post video, you could post pictures on that app of something that happened last week.
Yeah.
And if people start thinking about the app and you let them know about it, then they go there and all of a sudden, boom, they see that. It seems to be because our phones are so with us all the time. I'm guessing that's sort of what's happening for you.
Yeah, that's exactly, because we did the social media stuff, so you do Instagram, you do, Facebook, and I know a little bit about that. My daughter-in-law's a influencer with, 200,000 plus people following her, and so we've had a lot of conversations about how to reach your audience, how to connect with your audience. But with the app, it seems like you kind of bypass all the social media stuff for people who really don't want that, but you want to communicate directly to them. And so it becomes kind of a way for the insider, make them understand that they're an insider because they're part of the organization to have access to information that's unique.
Yeah. It's great. I love that. So, sort of maybe winding down our our main questions. I got a few quickies at the end, but let's think about that donor that makes that first time gift. And it's probably more in the it's above $1,000, maybe below 1,000 to 2,000. So it's a gift of substance that they're making to your organization. How do you follow up on that gift? What does that whole procedure look like from once you know that gift came a first time gift of that category?
So what we try to do is obviously get them on our mailing list. But when we communicate, there are three certain things that are fundamental for us as an organization. So we look at our input, our output, our outcomes, and then our impact. And we feel like donors are not interested in the input, the output, even outcomes, but they want to know what's the impact of that.
Sure.
So we're trying to tell stories of impact. In other words, we can tell X amount of wells have been put together, X amount of health centers put together. But what we try to do is, as a result of that well being put into that community, we have data now that shows that kids are not dying from dysentery, they're not dying from typhoid, they are being able to get cleaned up before they go to school, washing their clothes. And so we can measure actually impact in terms of kids' attendance in school. We know that also through the hospital, prenatal care, X amount of we see a drop in the infant death rate in these regions, and we see an increase in maternal survival rates in those regions. And so we try to really communicate that the impact.
For
Yeah,
sure.
and
Yeah,
so that allows them to feel like that investment, whether it's $35 for a safe baby, they're like, "Wow, that I did that once, let's do it again. Let's because that's what we do. Our also, goal is that things are sustainable in the areas that we're so once we put a clinic in, once we get it up and operational, we move on to another area to start the same thing. So we're also saying to the donor, we're not asking you for 100,000, and then we're gonna come back and ask you for 100,000 more for the same thing.
sure.
So we try to, make it sustainable so that we say, "Let's do this again. That was a lot of fun the first time. Let's do it again." And maybe you'd be willing to give a little bit more.
For sure. People begin almost like a stair step kind of a
Yeah,
process. This is
yeah.
what I did. This is what it achieved. Boy, I'm interested in seeing what else could be done. Yeah, I think in people's hearts, I think we're just created in some ways to be generous. Now we stifle that, we tamp it down, some of us more than others. But when there's an opportunity to do something where we see, my goodness, look what this actually accomplished. My $35 doesn't seem a lot, but look what it did.
Yeah, and that's really the key. I feel, like you say, I really like that statement where you say, that we do feel like we want to make a difference. We want to be generous. We want to make a difference. My wife's grandmother always said, if you're feeling sad, go serve someone, and you'll see that it'll turn you. Yeah. And so I think the idea of, what's the return that person gets by their gift? They get the emotional satisfaction of making a difference. They get the satisfaction of laying their head on a pillow and knowing, "Hey, whatever went happened today, at least I know this was a good thing,
Yeah.
a good thing that was accomplished."
That loops back to sort of the constant communication where you keep people engaged. I've often heard it said, and this is picking up on your printed copy, that you want to use multi-channel communication. So it's a printed copy, it's a text, it's a phone
Yeah.
call, it's a note. There's a variety of ways to really appreciate people. So
Yeah, that's a great word, yeah, and that's what we really wanna do. We want people to feel good about it. They feel like, "Oh, yeah, not only do I feel like I made a difference, but I feel like the organization appreciates me." Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Well, love the conversation. I've got a few quick questions at the end that are
Okay.
not really related to global partners, but more you as a person. So the first one is this: what is one piece of great advice you've received over your career?
Yeah, that's like so one that pops in my mind when we think of this context is, um build relationships and be intentional about the relationships you build. Seek out people who will make you better than yourself than you are right now, and create a better version of yourself. So I've always felt like that's an important thing, is to be intentional about building relationships.
Yeah, certainly keeps the focus in the right place, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. And that and I like the word intentional, where you've got some some, almost it's not like coaching or mentors, but it's kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reach out to those people.
Question number 2, what's a daily habit you cannot live without?
So for me, it's changed over time. It used to be, as you might remember, when we were a crowd, we used to go running in the morning,
I do
and
remember that.
we go crank out a few miles. Now it's a little different because I got a few more miles under my belt, but but for sure, the habit for me is to start my day off with some time of reflection. For me, it's I like to spend time. I usually open up the Bible. I'll read some portions of scripture, and that for me is invaluable. My mornings intentionally starts a little slower because I know once I head out the door, it doesn't slow down. So I try to make that cup of coffee and sit and have at least a few moments where I can just really pray and seek wisdom. My prayer is always, God, don't let me run ahead of you. Don't let me run behind you. Just let me run in step with you. So I'm running, but it's with God and it's through my couch.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're still running.
Well, figuratively, yeah.
I know, I understand that. Okay, so here's question number 3. Well, I know both of us are down the road a bit with age, but go back to when you were roughly 20, sort of that college life. And knowing what you know now, if you could give some advice back to your 20-year-old person, what would that advice be?
Definitely patience and confidence. Confidence in the Lord and patience, and know that God's got you on a path, or that we're on a path that not going to look maybe the way we think it's going to look. It could change, it could take different ways, but just be patient and not think of it like this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life kind of a thing.
For sure. I
Yeah.
love it.
And yeah, so being open, that means a lot of different things, but that would definitely be just be patient.
Sure.
It comes together.
It does. Okay, we're going to go a little to a deeper level of transparency. I want you to tell our audience about a failure, and I don't mean by that something dramatic, but and then a success that came or something good that developed because you had that setback, let's say.
Yeah. So a failure would be that I've had or I've learned from would be in the hiring process for the putting in the context of the organization and the context of my leadership. I've had failure hires that
Mm,
have failed because I wasn't honest about the hire. I was assuming a lot of things, and a lot of that was that we were all on the same page, only to realize well, that person wasn't at all on the same page with what
mm,
we were doing.
right.
And, as a result of that, I wouldn't, I'm not cynical, or that way, but I'm a little bit more cautious about that, and a little bit, probably more patient, rather than, well, this is a great, trying to convince yourself this is going to
Uh,
work because that person sold themselves in a good way,
for sure.
and realizing, although I like the person, it's probably not a great fit for the organization, and that's where I've had failures, where it didn't work out, and those are hard. Those are hard because sometimes you do like that person a lot, but just
Mhm.
wasn't a good fit. So I'm much more cautious and much more honest about the questions I'm gonna ask before someone joins with us as an organization.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful. I mean, it's painful, but help has been helpful.
Yeah, excellent. Here's the last question. Where's the place you like to go to recover, to recharge, to sort of disconnect from life and, you know, gain some new perspective, new focus? Where's that
Yeah.
spot?
For me, it would definitely be, somewhere in the mountains on a fly fishing stream, and I go back to that's a real great question I've thought about a lot, and it goes back to even my childhood. As a kid, I just loved doing that,
Yeah.
and if I can get out in the outdoors, if I'm up in a mountain on a fly fishing outside, I don't even have to catch fish at this point in my life. It's just
Yeah.
the cathartic therapy of being out there and being able to reflect and the beauty of being in those environments is so wonderful. It's very mentally, it's incredibly recharging for me.
Yeah. That's so good. I heard a person say one time, yeah, I'd like to get out of the water. Give me a fishing pole. I don't even need bait. I just want to watch the bobber in the water, you know?
Right. Very therapeutic. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And You look up, I mean, there's times when I've walked mountains and then I'll just sit down and eat my sandwich, and I'll just sit there and just not in a rush, not in a hurry, just enjoy God's creation, enjoy just being out there. It's good for my soul.
So true. Well, thank you, Ian, just for sort of letting us tap into your world a little bit. I'm so grateful for the last 25 years since we've known each other and the journey that you've been on, and just to hear the people's lives that are being changed physically, virtually. It's just amazing to hear. Why don't you just share a little bit how people can connect with you? I know you have the organization you mentioned at the beginning, but just share how, if somebody wants to follow up and learn more, how would they do that?
So obviously, LinkedIn's a great resource. People can connect and send me a message, and I enjoy that. I teach at Creighton University part time, just as an adjunct there, and so I know students use that to connect and send messages. So that's always a great resource. And on our website, they can connect on our website. My emails, my first name Ian, and then V last name, and then at Global Partners in Hope. So they can feel free to send me an email.
Sure.
That I enjoy that. Yeah.
Great. And it's globalpartnersinhope.com.
.com. Yeah.
Excellent.
Randy,
Well,
thanks also for having me on. I appreciate it. It's great to connect with you. I've always appreciated our conversation. So it's just great. I love it.
yeah, super. Well, thanks for your time. So, thank you, people, for tuning in. And we're going to continue to make more of these that will, the goal is to add value and itch where you're feeling it, addressing pain points, give you very practical advice. So, thanks for taking this in. So, we'll end it for now. Bye now.